We've moved, and he finds out where we live, what school she goes to, and he follows her as she has to take the long way home. She can't walk by herself. Excuse me.
Mr. Dunn, please don't interrupt.
Oh, you go ahead. You go ahead. No, I'm not saying nothing. I'm not even.
She can't even.
We are about to watch a pardon hearing where those applied to have their records expunged. Little did he know that his ex-wife and daughter would come in like a wrecking ball to claim the opposite of what he said at his expungement hearing. Let's jump in and see the results.
Thank you. At this time, you may explain to the board why you believe you're suitable for an absolute pardon.
Okay, so a lot of things that I did was when I was like,
Mr. Dunn, can you try to make sure you're stationary?
Okay, I'm just getting the work trip. 1 second. One second. Oh, nice. Did you hear me now?
Yes.
Hear me now?
Yes.
So a lot of things that I've done is when I was in my younger ages. So it affected a lot of things that I wanted to do growing up, as far as like being embarrassment, jobs. I tried to get into certain schools and I couldn't do it. So now I'm in a place where my kids need to see that I'm doing better in life overall. I have 2 daughters. You know what I mean? And a lot of things I regret because I have daughters. One being me and my daughter's mother, that's the victim in my situation. Me and her came a long way. Me and my daughter came a long way. You know what I mean? We had a rough relationship in the beginning because of it. We came over that and we actually speak now. We doing better things. I'm doing better things in life. She has a younger sibling. So I work full time. I'm trying to become a ASC certified mechanic. I'm a manager at AutoZone right now as we speak. I'm actually at work right now as we speak. And I'm just trying to better my life overall for me and my family.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dunn. So you talked about, being a different person today. Can you tell us a little bit of how you changed from where you were to now?
So a lot of things that I did then, I do completely opposite. So I actually completed a domestic violence program, Evolve. I did probation, really with no issues. So I just been staying out the way, trying to keep my nose clean. We really observe situations better than I did then now. Like everything doesn't deserve a reaction the way I reacted then. You know what I mean? So I try to maintain my composure, my anger, all of the above, to make sure I don't make the same mistakes that I did then now.
Yeah. So I know you paid your restitution in full, and
Yes,
you mentioned the fact that the majority of your charges were against the mother of your oldest child.
Yes.
Right. So what have both of you done to repair the relationship?
So me and her, we did like a lot of things. Like we spoke like majority of the time, like if there's anything, certain things that go on between me and her or concerning my daughter, I speak to my daughter directly, or we go through my mother as a middle person. So that way we won't have no type of situations, no conflicts, and any of that. And then like when we see each other, there's no animosity. She'll see me, I say hi, she'll wave, and we just keep it pushing. No problems at all.
Okay. So you're not on a one-on-one conversation level with her. You go through your mother as a third party.
If we need to, we do, but usually we don't, on the most part.
How old is your daughter now?
My daughter's 18. She just turned 18 in December.
Okay. And you said you completed the domestic violence program. What particular skill did you gain from the program that you feel has been helpful to you?
More so observing the red flags before a situation gets brought too far, and when to walk away and really acknowledge like some things, like I said, are not worth the energy. And like
And
maintaining, excuse me.
no, go ahead.
Oh, and just reanalyzing things like and how I approach things, maybe the tone of voice, the body language, just things like that, just stay away from.
Because you had, quite a few charges, but hopefully, as you said, you've learned some new skills and you have moved on. You're in your daughter's life.
Yes, ma'am.
And you want to set better examples for your children, as you stated.
Yes, ma'am.
You're currently the manager at AutoZone,
Yes, ma'am.
and you want to become a certified auto mechanic.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, who does your daughter live with?
Her mother currently.
Okay. And so mother and daughter have a good relationship.
Yeah, they got a good relationship. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just wondering because sometimes I know because the parents are at odds and the child is in the middle.
Yeah, we had that in the beginning, but like now, like I said, my daughter just turned 18, so a lot of things as she got older didn't really become a thing because she realized things for herself. You know what I mean? So she made it her business to have a relationship with me as I was pushing for one with her. So it wasn't really that much as she got older. In the beginning, it was rough. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for answering my questions. Mr. Pohl?
I don't have any questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Page?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Dunn, at the time that these offenses occurred, did you consider yourself an angry person?
Yes, to an extent at that time, because I had a lot going on as being a young father, parent, and then just regular life in general. So a lot of things were just burden on me. And then like certain situations came and I just exploded without really thinking and moving forward.
And what would you say to your daughter? Well, does your daughter know that you and her mother had domestic disputes?
Actually, me and her had a very long discussion about everything that happened between me and mother.
And you told her that you put your hands on her?
Yes, I did explain that to her.
And isn't it ironic that, as the chair said, most of these charges are domestic violence related, that you have two daughters? Like,
Yeah, and that's really a main thing. Why I'm trying to be the example now of what the man should be, even though I made the mistakes that I did make it when my daughter was younger.
and so the second mother of your child, I know you have an 18-year-old and a 12-year-old. How was the relationship?
She's 10.
Oh, she's 10. Okay.
Yeah.
How was the relationship with that mom?
Me and her are great. We don't have no problems at all.
No domestic. Are you in a relationship now?
Me and her not together, but even when we didn't have those problems.
No, I'm saying, okay, with the second mother, no, but are you in a relationship?
Yeah.
Are you in a
No,
relationship?
I'm not. No. Me and her have been separated for 2 years, 2.5 years.
Okay. All right. So it recently ended.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm all set.
Okay. So, Mrs. DeJesus from Victims Services here.
Yes, good afternoon. I do have a statement and it reads as follows. I disagree with the decision for Ron Lee Dunn to have a pardon. It is difficult for my daughter and I every day. As much counseling as we do have to do and still continue to do in order to try and move past this ordeal. We both still have marks on us to this day from the abuse endured in the hands of Ron Lee. Someone caused so much pain, emotionally, verbally, and physically, to be able to live his life normally, knowing he has done this to not only myself, but to his own daughter is outrageous. He has not changed when he did, he has not changed. When he did see his daughter the few times she did go to her grandmother's house. He verbally abused her to the point where she came home crying. She does not want a relationship with him at all, and she is 18 years old now. I spoke with my daughter about this as well, and in her words, she does not want him to get a pardon either, because he has not changed. We've moved, and he finds out where we live, what school she goes to, and he follows her as she has to take the long way home. She can't walk by herself. Excuse me.
Mr. Dunn, please don't interrupt.
Oh, you go ahead. You go ahead. No, I'm not saying nothing. I'm not even.
She can't even walk by herself because she's afraid. Someone like Ron Lee has to understand his actions, and he never will if he gets this pardon. He is basically living scot-free with no repercussions for his actions, and that is terrifying. He can be employed without a background, and who is to say he won't do this to someone else or to us again? So we are asking that he does not get this pardon, and to think about what we have to live with and how this affects us. Thank you for listening to us, and we hope that Ron Lee does not have this pardon because we have suffered and continue to because of Ron Lee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. What's concerning for me is we're hearing a different story from what Mr. Dunn has
That's
shared with us today.
You may not rebut.
Could you not say anything? And, I specifically asked him what his relationship was with both the daughter and the mother. And based on what he was telling me, I'm hearing the opposite now. And so I am concerned about that. And I certainly hope that Mr. Dunn can figure out what more work he can do in the community to really think about the impact of what he's doing to his daughter. So I am going to
Madam Chair, I have a question for the parole officer because he's the one that completed this application.
yeah. Go ahead.
Parole Officer Ferraro. I heard the victim's statement, and I heard something that appears to be like additional charges or would bring about additional charges, but I'm not seeing that on the criminal record here. So the last thing that I have is a conviction in 2013, there's 2 operating under suspensions and a failure to appear. But the last time there's any kind of conviction for any kind of family violence or anything like that, I have as in 2009 and 2007. Was there other offenses that aren't on this application?
I would need a few minutes to review the record if you wanted to take a break for a few minutes.
Because I heard what the victim said, and if somebody is following somebody home and stuff like that, I think there would be an additional police report or something like that. So I'm just.
I don't mean to interrupt, but it's my understanding that especially with domestic violence offenses, a lot of times those things go unreported.
Right.
And so perhaps the victim is sharing things from her perspective. And just as Mr. Dunn has shared his perspective, he was under the impression that he and his daughter were on good terms, but apparently they're not. And it may have been because the victim was sharing the way she felt about the father asking for a pardon. We don't know because we aren't there. But
right. That's why I'm trying to figure it out, because certainly if there's something more here, I wouldn't want to support a pardon.
But is there no charges, additional charges? But why why would a victim come during the hearing and say something that is still not true? They are still
I'm
in
not saying
therapy.
that I'm not saying that it's true or not true. All I'm saying is that, you know, we just were told something.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt, please?
Yeah.
So do you want the officer to try to see if there's additional information, or would you like to proceed or
I mean-
continue the case? Is that is that the request?
I mean, I would just like to know if there's additional charges here that were unreported, because
Okay, so then we
that's
can.
what's come to light with
Right.
the victim statement.
I understand that. So
Okay.
what I'm going to suggest, Madam Chair, is that we put this case on hold and go on to the next one while Officer Ferraro looks it up, or.
I'm actually, board members, I'm pretty deep in the case right now. I know
Thank you.
Officer Ferraro is busy with facilitating the
here,
hearing,
yeah,
so I'm knee
yes.
deep in some information currently. So just give me a few more minutes. If you'd like to move on, I will definitely come let you know once I have compiled what you are looking to have answered.
I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
So
Next would be, thank you. Did you want to return to Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Reviewed the case with Parole Supervisor Brooks. There isn't anything beyond the record that's before you, and we confirm that there are no protective orders currently in place.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I have one
So-
additional question for Mr. Jesus.
Yes,
I wanted to determine, was the daughter in this case ever a victim? A registered victim, or is one of these cases that involved harm to the daughter?
I would have to review my file. One second.
according to the letter that they submitted, I would think that she was, but in the offense that I have information for, it says that when he assaulted her, one time she was holding a baby. And then I don't know.
Just in my quick review, I could find no information that showed anybody was a victim within these offenses outside of the adult at the time.
Madam Chair, I have enough information to get to my decision.
Mr. Cole, that's correct. I have nothing with the daughter.
Thank you.
Other than
Okay,
what Paige mentioned.
okay, so
Thank
it was just the mother. Is that correct, Mrs. De Jesus? It's just the mother of one of the children.
Correct, the mother of the oldest daughter. Who is-
I'm not sure. Okay.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, Ms. Page.
I'm not sure about the relevance of whether or not it was the mother and the daughter. If the daughter was in the house and she saw this occurring, it's an issue for her.
Right.
That's it. So
So,
Mr. Dunn
you
back
know,
on, I don't see him.
so
He's right here.
my concern here is that,
I'm here.
according to Mr. Dunn, you know, he has a good relationship with the daughter. And you know, he said earlier on he would go to his mother to deal with the daughter, but you know, based on the victim's input today from the mother of the victim, it's a little bit different. So you know, Mr. Dunn, I hope there's some more things that you can work on to, improve, your relationship because you certainly have 2 children. So I hope you focus on doing something other than DV in the community. And if you thought you had some issues with anger, maybe they're still there and it's something that you might need to look at. So in the case of Ron Lee Dunn,
Madam Chair,
I'm
I would also like to put my thoughts out there because I'm not in agreement.
Okay,
The 2 offenses that deal with family violence are from 2007 and 2009. They both wound up with actually 3 of them, both with suspended sentences, one with an unconditional discharge, and resulted in probation. Since that time, they're verified, but through the parole officer, there are no additional charges in regard to family violence. There's no additional violation of protective orders. There are currently no protective orders in place. And Mr. Dunn is looking for a pardon to help him with other employment and being able to deal with the collateral consequences that come from convictions. So based upon there being no further convictions after the family violence that resulted in suspended sentences in 2007 and 2009, I would support a pardon in this case.
okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, I appreciate the statement that Mr. Pohl provided. He wanted us to understand or gain a better understanding of why he was voting the way that he did. And although I can appreciate that, however, especially with domestic violence cases, there's far too many times that people say that things have occurred and they're ignored and then the person's dead. And I'm not saying that that is the case in this offense, but what I am saying is that if the victim took time to write in a statement, who are we to say that she's not telling the truth or she isn't? So I am inclined to believe what she has to say. And perhaps there's some repairing that Mr. Dunn needs to do with his family. Perhaps that's what needs to happen. Perhaps he can get a letter of recommendation in the future. But today, as it stands with the injury and impact to the victim and or the victim's family, I am going to vote to deny his request for an absolute pardon.
So for me, he sort of, minimized the relationship and his, the actions on his part as it affected his children. So in the case of Ron Lee Dunn, I move to deny his request for a pardon today. Mrs. Page?
Aye.
Mr. Pohl?
No,
And I vote aye in favor of the denial. I have 12, Mrs. Page. Do you have something else?
I would say 6. The victim did participate.
Yes. So number 6 says the injury and impact to victim or victim's family. And 12, the seriousness of the offense would be diminished by the expungement of your criminal history. So it's a majority decision. Mr. Pohl dissented. So Mr. Dunn, we hope that maybe you will go out to see how you can work on repairing the relationship and, look into any additional programs in the community that you think you might need. So thank you.
Madam Chair, I just need 2 minutes.
We'll take a 2-minute break. Thank you.
I am just relieved that they did not grant. Because if you're familiar with the Connecticut parole hearings and these pardon hearings, they are so lenient. They coddle the applicants to an extent that is at least shocking to me after coming from all the Louisiana hearings and how they handle it and the standard that they require from those who are seeking a pardon. It's night and day. But seeing Pohl actually want to grant was just, he is, I mean, the more that I get to know these different members, the more that I get to, I guess, create certain feelings about them. And I do not like him at all. He is by far my least favorite member. And I hope that you appreciated being able to see their faces now. And hopefully you can remember who they are and tie it to the hearings where we're not able to. But there is something, I mean, I am just so glad that Miss Page stated what I think a lot of us were thinking, which is like, you know, he wanted to bring up the fact, well, there's no police report. So it's probably, and she's like, a lot of time there aren't police reports. Look, why is that even something that you would bring up? Why, what she said, the words, I'm going to take the side of the victim in this case. You know, we're not talking about prison time. We're not talking about even parole. We're talking about whether or not you should get a pardon. And if there's any chance, what you're going to do, Mr. Mike Pohl, is say, the victim made it all up. She's lying. You know, he has 2 felony charges, one in 2007, one in 2009, but he's the one that wants a pardon. But because she comes up and makes a statement, a mic drop statement, and then Mr. Pohl is actually going to give the benefit of the doubt to the man, which would be saying one thing. It would be saying that she lied. You can't make it up. This is a member that is handpicked by the governor of Connecticut to protect its constituency, to protect survivors and victims. In the report, she claims that he's stalking her daughter. Her daughter has to take the long way home because she's in fear of this man, and yet he and he wants to see a police report. Now you want to play devil's advocate and say, well, you know, you don't want to, you know, a woman scorned is, you know, no, what is it? The no wrath like a woman scorned, and she's making it all. And it's like, but no, he was dishonest through the entire process of the hearing. He stated, oh yeah, we have a you know, it's a decent relationship. We talk, we chat. Did that sound like a relationship where they talk? Oh yeah, he has a good relationship with his daughters. Everything is great. Did that really sound like it? Do you think, man? And remember, this is a pardon. It should be very simple, Mr. Pohl. Pardons should not be handed out like candy, but they do in Connecticut, and we'll see a few more that might shock you. But man, you know, there's no additional information to share on this case, but I did want to bring it to you. And I gotta tell you though, there's a few more that we're gonna see that might make you feel a little bit differently. But I just wanted to go over their bios. We've done it once before, but I think now is a good time. And like I said, I've given Paige some serious. I've ranted on her because one is I don't think she's quite qualified to be a member. And the reason that I say this is because she was appointed as a full-time member in 2014. She was previously employed as a paralegal at Burstein, which is a which is what's it called, an injury lawyer. You know, it's the classic, you know, infomercial. Have you fallen and broken your leg? Do you need some payout? So she was a paralegal for that firm for 15 years, and that's the extent of her experience. And so to get appointed in 2014, it just doesn't add up to me. And she's made decisions that have made me go nuts. You know, maybe you've seen it. Now, Miss Chance, although I think she did great in this one. Now, Miss Chance was appointed Connecticut Board of Pardons and Paroles as a full-time member in October 2014 as well. She came to the board with more than 16 years of supervisory experience evaluating parolees for appropriate placement and parole supervision program. She recently worked as a therapist with the Connection Inc., where she counseled and assisted parolees in maintaining parole compliance. Prior to the position, Ms. Chan served as Director of Employment Education Training in both parolee and so that makes perfect sense. She seems to be a great fit for the board. And then we go to Paul, who is my now least favorite board member. I do not like him. I just don't. There's something very off in my opinion. Now he was appointed to the Connecticut Board of Pardons and Paroles as a full-time member in May 2019. Prior to his appointment to the board as a certified teacher, he taught the 8th grade history. Right? I mean, that's his qualification. From 2009 to 2019, he earned degrees in community college. Okay, and then he was now here's where he has some things that seem like, you know, like a Mr. Mirabella, except that nothing in the way that he conducts the hearings reflect that, because and you'll see what I mean. Mr. Pohl, if you haven't already, Mr. Pohl was appointed in 1986 to the Connecticut Alcohol and Drug Abuse Commission by the governor due to his experience and knowledge in prevention and treatment. While the commissioner, he interacted with many community-based treatment programs, as well as the Connecticut Department of Corrections. Executive Director of the Pathfinder Association, where he began his personal recovery in 1984. For the past 35 years, he has worked with many people seeking recovery, but you simply don't see any of that reflect in the way he handles his hearings. And I think now is a good time to maybe discuss that. We're going to watch a hearing of a man who took a life in a DUI many years ago, but it's the way that I think he conducts himself in this hearing, which is particularly disturbing to me. But with that, let's jump in.
Okay, Ronnie LeVar Dunn. Mrs. Page?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would support Mr. Dunn coming to a full hearing. His last criminal conviction was in 2014. It was for failure to appear, again with these tinted windows. He's working. He is supporting his 2 children, and he has completed the appropriate programming. I would bring him to a full hearing to see how he's doing.
Mr. Pohl?
Agreed.
Ron Lee LeVar Dunn, I move to grant a full hearing. Mrs. Page?
Aye.
Mr. Pohl?
Aye.
I vote aye. Full hearing granted.
And at this time, you may explain to the board why you believe you're suitable for an absolute pardon.
I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I believe I deserve a pardon because since my last conviction in December of 2005, I have completely turned my life around. I am not the same person I was back then. I have accepted full responsibility for my prior choices and actions. I am fully aware no one is to blame but myself for what happened that tragic night. I think about the victim and his family every single day and wish I could have gotten help with my addiction before someone lost their life. I want everyone to understand, particularly young people who think they are invincible, the dangers of drinking and driving. It was one of the main reasons I would participate and attend driver's education classes, to be the terrible example of what could happen if you drink and drive. I wanted these young people to learn from my horrible mistake. After the accident, I was in such a downspin of depression and used alcohol to numb me and what happened on that awful night, which led to my DUI after the accident. It is not an excuse, but an explanation to why there was a second incident. My incarceration saved me, helped me sober up, and gave me the time to reflect on my actions and how I wanted to change my life. I did not like who I was and wanted to change. While incarcerated, I took every opportunity to better myself, starting with taking and completing multiple drug and alcohol classes, I had a job during the majority of my incarceration. These jobs range from maintenance to the kitchen to working in supplies. I also took and completed a variety of classes, horticulture and a culinary class, which I later used to gain employment. Upon release, I slowly began to change. I found a job at a small breakfast place and McDonald's that was willing to give me a chance. I biked to both jobs because I knew I needed stable employment, and at the time, I didn't have a license. An opportunity opened up at a local tire shop that allowed me full-time work, so I made the switch to becoming a tire and alignment technician. I then had my first child, Oliver, who would be later diagnosed with a very rare genetic disorder called UBA5. And lastly, I would meet my wife, who has been a great support system. While it is not always easy to attend meetings with a special needs child and my second son, I do make it a priority to go when I can, especially when I'm stressed and have learned to recognize my triggers. Having Oliver prevents some unique challenges because he can't walk or talk due to his very rare genetic disorder. With his genetic disorder, he is also prone to seizures. There are very few people in our life that can watch Oliver due to his special circumstances. Even changing him from his wheelchair position to his bed requires heavy lifting. While I do not like to use my older son as an excuse, I can say it is very challenging to attend meetings on a regular basis. However, my sobriety is a top priority. I really can't relapse. I know it seems strange, but my life won't allow for it. I don't want it. I have no desire for it. My life is much better. But if, for instance, my son has a seizure, I have to give him medicine. He's got to go to the emergency room. It's a struggle every day. While I may not attend meetings on a regular basis, I am a member of the Alcoholics Anonymous Facebook page, where I regularly read and learn about the addiction. I'm also happy to report my wife and I started a business over 6 years ago. This business has been my full-time job and keeps us very busy. One of the reasons for requesting a pardon is so I can become part owner of the business. We have our home improvement contractor's license, and it is more challenging to put a felon on the license. We recently grew and hired a full-time technician, and now have 2 vans on the road. We are grateful that our dream is now helping another young man reach some of his goals. The last reason I'm requesting this pardon is so that I can try to become a volunteer firefighter. This is a position where I feel like I could give back to the community, being a first responder. I'm gonna quickly kind of go through a day that happened, which isn't out of the ordinary. So this past Saturday, I have a 4-year-old and an 11-year-old. 4-year-old had a T-ball game at 8 o'clock in the morning. I woke up 6:30 or so, came down to my older son, changed his diaper, put him in his feeding chair. My older son and wife woke up shortly after. Got all of the morning duties done, including giving my older son his medicine he needs to prevent seizures and muscle tightness. Got the kids and wheelchair loaded up into the car, proceeded to go to the T-ball game. At the T-ball game, I noticed, because my son has a habit of putting his hand in his mouth, he had an infection. After the T-ball game, I went to UConn emergency room with my older son, because an infection could, obviously, it's not good for anyone. And my wife took my younger son to his birthday party for a classmate. Got a prescription for him. They drained and cleaned his wound, got a prescription. I went to the CVS, chose to go through the drive-through because it was much easier than getting my son out of the car into his wheelchair and then waiting in line. Came home, gave him his medicine. He didn't take to it. He proceeded to get sick. Obviously called the doctor. They decided to try a different prescription. Turns out he was 1 in 100 chance to have an allergic reaction to this other one, which is related to amoxicillin. And fortunately, the infection with Neosporin is getting better. So things are good on that end. But I just kind of wanted to walk you through a normal day in my life. The last reason I'm requesting this part, I think I said that already, sorry. Thank you again for listening to my journey today, and I ask that you consider what you heard today in favor of granting me a pardon.
Thank you, Mr. Quaglini. Mr. Paul?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and certainly, Mr. Quaglini, I read this application, and what happened, when you were 21 years old, these convictions happened, is incredibly tragic all the way around. And you went into incarceration, and you dealt with some things by taking some programming, and then you came out and you engaged in recovery. So I listened carefully to you with your description of a day for you, and what that's like. There was a point in time back when this happened that you had started recovery and then stopped engaging and had a relapse. Is that correct?
Are we going back to 2005?
Yeah.
Yes. So after the accident, I did start going to AA, and I was sober for 90-ish days. I can't recall the exact figure. And I'll be honest and say it was too much for me to cope with. The feelings that I had from the accident, the stress, the guilt that I felt.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, I relapsed and I landed in prison. And I wish these incidents never happened, but
Certainly,
incarceration was the best thing that could have happened for me.
certainly. I revisited that because, where you are with recovery now, right? And I know after a period of time that the thought of drinking or drugging it's not there, right? But the fact that someone has alcoholism addiction is always there, right? Even if somebody's not thinking about a drink or a drug, right?
Yes. And may I speak?
Sure.
I apologize. I'll keep it brief. So this past year, my older brother, who was my absolute role model, he was a Hartford police officer fit for 15 plus years. He left the force for different reasons. He himself, actually, if you go back to a couple years back, wrote me a wonderful letter for the last time I tried to get a pardon. Inevitably, he suffered from alcoholism, and I did try everything I could to get him back in sobriety. Unfortunately, he committed suicide, and I went to meetings. So it was as of last year. So I know my triggers, which isn't an excuse to not go, but I can see them and go when I need to. I realize that's not how AA should be used, but I am aware of what needs to happen if I'm feeling any type of way.
So do you know when it comes to recovery that you don't actually have to physically go anymore?
I am not much on the Zoom meetings. If that's what you're meaning, like going to AA virtually. I'm not sure if that's what you were getting at.
So what about, so not being much on the Zoom meetings and just having that connection when you can? And I know, I don't know. I can imagine only what it's like to have a son that has struggles like your son does. You know, and the extra things or the things that other parents don't have to do that's required of you. that you have to do to take care of your son, right? But it's also about taking care of you, right? So I don't say this as a, as some kind of criticism, but when it comes to meetings, doesn't it, being able to go to an online meeting is better than not being able to go to any meetings at all, right?
Yes.
So that's just the thing. And certainly, the tragedy of your brother, you know, when you know it's possible and somebody that close to you drinks themselves to death, it's tragic, you know. And certainly it's like it's about a renewed effort on somebody who needs help to continue to engage, right? Because that little guy in the chair needs you,
They both do.
right? And there's it's about being able to put on your own mask and before you help someone else, right? So in this particular case, it's simultaneous. So I don't want you to lose sight of, of taking care of you, right? You've come through tragedy with your brother and such, and that's important. And the other thing is, in this case, and we're going to hear from the victim's family in this case. It's tragedy
Yes.
when somebody on their way in, on their way to get help, causes the death of another. That's it's really a hard thing to reconcile. Can you talk a little bit more about I know that you've said that you think about it every single day. But is there anything else there that you processed? One of the programs that you had when you were incarcerated was voices. Can you process that a little bit further for me?
I live with sorrow and remorse on a daily basis. As far as how I process it, it's a struggle. I've talked with a therapist about it. I've talked with my wife about it. I've talked with family members about it. I don't think it's something I will ever get over. It's not something I want to necessarily get over because I don't want to downplay my crimes. It comes in waves. It's never not a thought, but I can just be driving and it comes over me. And I talk myself through it. And by that I mean I can't go back. In a heartbeat, I would undo that day. Unfortunately, the world doesn't work that way. So while I may wish it didn't happen, I can't change my past actions. All I can try to do is learn from them and better myself. And I did get a lot from talking to driver's ed students and telling my story and trying to prevent this tragedy from occurring again.
How about where do you think his family is?
Where do I think his family is?
Mm.
I am certain they are probably broken and crushed and angry.
And the thing is that there's no making that right in terms of what happened, but you just talking about like going to the driver's ed classes and talking to people about what is possible if you drink and drive.
Yes.
Hopefully somebody thinks about that prior to getting into a vehicle, intoxicated and potentially causing the death of another person, you know?
And I believe I did. I definitely think I touched some students that would shake my hand or give me a hug after speaking with the classes.
I hope you continue to honor the life of the victim in this case by continuing to do things like that. Madam Chair, I don't have anything further.
Thank you, Mr. Pohl. Mrs. Page?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Quaglini, when was the last time you had a drink?
2005.
What day in 2005?
That was the day of my arrest, December 9th.
Okay, so when you did this violation of probation, you were not under the influence of anything where you fled the scene and rear-ended another car?
That was before December 9th. I just pled guilty to it. But to answer your question, I was not under the influence of anything. I know what it reads as, and I was no excuse. I made a mistake.
Okay, so whenever there's a birthday party or wedding celebrations, you don't drink wine?
No,
And how about going out to bars?
no, I don't ever drink.
Okay.
I
And
can
so,
go out to a bar with my friend. I don't make it a habit, more of a dinner thing. And like my wife can have a drink in front of me and I will either order a water or a Diet Coke.
so tell me this, Mr. Quaglini, how would you feel if you and your family were in a car, say you're coming home from church, whatever the case may be, and there's a drunk driver on the road and they hit you and your family head on, and all of you sustain injuries, but one of your children died? How would you feel if the person that caused that death, yes, it was an accident and I get it, but there was also a choice because that person chose to drink and get behind the wheel? How would you feel if one of your kids was that victim that died at the hands of someone else's irresponsible decision-making?
Crushed. Heartbroken.
And how about them asking you for a pardon, asking for you to just forget that, your kid was here?
I've wondered that myself. I've pondered that. And I don't know I can put myself in that position. Like, I would have lots of anger. I would have lots of animosity. I would like to think I may have forgiveness at some point, and I can't speak. Obviously, the loss of the closest person I can use is my brother. I mean, if someone else caused that to happen to him, would I be able to forgive right away? My answer is no. If that person continued on the right track and did the right things and served his sentence, I'd like to think I would have possible forgiveness. Would I want to go give them the biggest hug? Probably not.
Would you want would you want them to ask for a pardon, though, is the question, and just pretend as if this never even happened? Because that's the way the victims see it. You know what I'm saying? And it may not be the truth, but to them, that's their truth.
Understood.
And so we really do take that into consideration as well, because this is something, and I understand that you want to move on with your life, and it really does sound as if you are making meaningful strides in your life, and I will pray for you and your family, because having a child with special needs is very challenging. However, you still have a life, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And,
Understood.
they don't have their loved one there anymore. And it's not to try to make you feel guilty. It's to kind of help you put things into perspective. So maybe they haven't moved on yet, you know, and that's something that you should expect. However, we do occasionally get the cases where the victim's like, I forgive him, God bless him, you know. And prayerfully that might be the case today, but you know, that's not to negate the work that you're doing and the work that you have done, just so that you know. Okay.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we have Mrs. DeJesus from the Office of Victim Services. Are
Yes,
you there?
yes, good afternoon, board members. I do have 2 statements to read. I received the victim's son's statement via text, and it reads as follows. This is Gabriel, the son of Jose. You killed my father, and you left me and my family scarred for life. You said you would pay for my scholarship and didn't. I have a daughter now that I take care of too, and it's not easy. End of statement. Before reading the victim's mother's statement, I would just like to state, I do have a statement from the victim's mother, but before I read it, I would just like to clarify that I informed her of who the audience is and offered to edit her statement on her behalf so that it was addressed to the board. She declined and asked me to read it as is, and it reads as follows. You see this boy? It's my son, the one your son killed, and left a 5-year-old little boy with no father and left me without my son that I cry for every single day. You think your son's heart is okay? No, he killed my son. Lady, your son is with you. I have to celebrate my son's birthday today on May 2nd in the cemetery, but you celebrate his birthday in your house. Nobody's going to give my son back. Your son sent me a letter saying that he's going to take care of my grandson, but he never helped me. No, sit, I can't do that. Look how beautiful my boy was. Today, my son today it's his birthday, and I just cry and I don't know how I feel. That's my baby boy that's now an angel. Your son did this. How he feels about that. You don't know how my life changed when my son died. I'm not understanding, but no, he killed my baby boy. He needs to suffer the same as I'm suffering now. End quote. Thank you. I'm all set, board members.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. DeJesus. So I'll go back to Mr. Pohl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And certainly, the victims in this case, and I addressed it during my questioning, there is no fixing that.
Mhm.
There is no bringing back a life that was taken through, while it's alcoholism is a disease, it's devastating, and what I want the family to know is that I hear what they're saying, and I want to take a look at the case as a whole, and certainly Mr. Quaglini has made every effort since the 2 offenses that are here, 2 different dates of offenses that are here, to try to do the right thing. He's not a person that has walked away from it. He has gone and spoken with the driver's ed classes, which is certainly the place where it's important to go and talk about this and share a message that if you do this, this is what's going to happen, and this is my life now because of this. Certainly, there was a period of incarceration, which was warranted. And Mr. Quaglini has gone on to have a family and have be a primary caregiver to his son, who has physical disabilities and needs support with that. He understands how to go through tragedy without drinking, as was the case with the loss of his brother, due to the same disease. And, when it comes to this, it's what do we do in this particular case? Granting a pardon doesn't dismiss the death of someone. It doesn't say, go forget about this. Mr. Quaglini and his family and the victim's family will never forget about this. And when it comes to employment, doing the right thing since your release from incarceration and your family, you've continued to demonstrate how things need to go in a case like this. So for me, Madam Chair, while respecting the pain and the loss of the family, I will support the pardon for Mr. Quaglini.
Thank you, Mr. Pohl. Mrs. Page?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can appreciate Mr. Pohl's rationale for supporting the pardon. And I will agree that, Mr. Quaglini has really tried to turn his life around. And I would encourage him to continue in those efforts. However, I am going to vote today to deny Mr. Quaglini's request for an absolute pardon based on the injury and the impact to the victim and or the victim's family. Sometimes these victims come forward and this kind of reopens their wounds. And maybe one day soon, they will forgive. But I am going to say no at this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I certainly respect the fact that Mr. Quaglini has done so much to turn his life around. And I know that by participating in the, excuse me, in the driver's education class and telling his story is of great value to him. And, hopefully, even though he says there are often times when he does think about it, but I would also like him to think about putting himself in the victim's family place. And it's obvious that they are still struggling and life continues to be difficult for them. And it's a little bit different for Mr. Quaglini because, he has truly worked on improving his life and wanting to provide for his family. So for him, his life is moving forward. Just listening to the two statements by the victim's family today, they certainly are kind of moving on at a slower pace, but with a lot more pain. So In the case of Nicholas Quaglini, I am going to vote to deny his request for a pardon today. Mrs. Page,
Aye.
Mr. Pohl?
No,
So it's a majority decision, and I certainly hope that Mr. Quaglini will continue on the positive path that he's going and to, continue to have kind thoughts for the victim's family.
Madam
So good
Chair,
luck.
we just need to give reasons.
So I'm going to give the reasons are number 6, the injury and impact to the victim's family. And 12 is the seriousness of your offense would be diminished by the expungement of your criminal history.
Okay.
So those are the 2 reasons, Mr. Quaglini. And we hope that you'll, as I said, continue on a positive path.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Mr. Pohl, can you imagine that he is a part of this board since 2014? I mean, if this person doesn't get denied, who would? I mean, your background is the whole AA thing. That's your expertise. What about this hearing made you feel confident that this man is taking accountability and is maybe not a danger? I mean, you just heard the victims speak their pain. He killed someone while driving, was given a gift of probation, then drank again, got revoked, and then doesn't attend AA. But the reason, and you want to make this or that, you shouldn't attend AA, you should attend AA, but this is his background. I can't believe I could, when I compared it to Mr. Marabella, I'm just saying in terms of background, but this is what Mr. Marabella would have said at this hearing.
If you are an alcoholic or were an alcoholic, you are an alcoholic today.
Sometimes you can appreciate him. This isn't someone he's seeking a pardon, but he took a life. And here's the problem that I have with this hearing. Let me just take a step back. One is, now he has a disabled child, and of course that is incredibly difficult. And I have nothing to say except that, but here's where it upsets me. One is, I think there is it's like being completely oblivious, completely unaware of the idea that you killed the child of someone else. And then you're going to come up to your hearing with the picture of your children in the background to make sure it's square and center. To start your hearing talking about your child, focusing on it, while meanwhile the victim is suffering because her child's birthday, which happened just 5 days before this hearing, that she has to go and visit him at the grave. How can you be so oblivious to that? That's something I just can't wrap my mind around. And he uses it as the excuse and the reason for why he can't go to AA. But he's saying that he wants this pardon so that he can become a volunteer firefighter. Hello? I mean, did he not take a step back and think about the contradictions in that statement? You're insulting us. You're insulting apparently only two of the board members, maybe, and the family. It doesn't make sense. See, if you want to say, I don't do AA, it doesn't work for me, it's not my thing, but he didn't even do that. He's too busy for it. Virtual doesn't work for him. Oh, but when he's feeling the need, he'll go. It's pandering. It's dishonesty. And we're talking about the idea that he took a life. It's there's just showing a lack of empathy. And then, and there were certain things I thought he handled well with the interview in terms of answering questions and certain things like that. But when you take a step back, I would like to think that one day I would be able to forgive them. I wouldn't give them a hug, but I would like to think that one day I'd be able to forgive them. What about the answer could be, you know what? If they are not willing to forgive, I'd understand it. Let's leave it up to the victims. What's wrong with that answer? We're talking again about a pardon. This is not about prison time. This is not about parole. This is a privilege. And then there was another red flag I couldn't understand. He said, when he asked him to say, how would you feel if it was the closest person to me is my brother that I could relate to being killed in an accident. And it's like, your dead brother? Like, what about your wife? What about your two children? What are you talking about? The closest, really? Why can't you just relate to your child? It was just weird. I can't. I have I don't attend meetings. I won't relapse. My time in my life won't allow me to. That's the classic, like, if you talk to people who are addicts, you never want to say something like that. They always say you can't feel like I think that's what I know. There's a lot of people disagree, and not everyone fits into the same peg or whatever. But that's not exactly the type of answer you want to hear. I just won't. I can't. And then he also I thought the audacity to say, and I'm a member of a Facebook group, and I read the comments there. I'm a member of an AA Facebook group. I mean, remember the severity and seriousness of what he's asking for and what's happening here. I just don't. Now, the whole driver's ed thing, I think that's great. I mean, that takes a lot to go to driver's ed and have to talk to students and live through what you've done. I don't know how often he does that. I thought that was very commendable. But there were just certain things in the hearing that disturbed me. Coming in and using your son and being completely blind to the irony. Anyways, at least two of the board members had the sense to deny, but we're going to watch a few more hearings that might change how you feel. But I don't want to. You'll make your own decision. We're not an echo chamber here. It's best that we do have different opinions, and that's where we want to keep it. But with that, I do have one thing to share. Sorry, Richard. Did find one thing with a little bit of information. I do like to share information in these unpackings, so I'll share it. It's not that much, but it's a lawsuit by the family. Strike date 2007. So according to the complainant, on or about January, so the family was suing basically the alcohol store, the liquor store that sold him. He was underage, the liquor, and also the landlord of the liquor store, which I'll blame on the attorney for doing that lawsuit. In my opinion, that suing a landlord of liquor store is insane. But I'm sure that it was just the attorney. It had nothing to do with the family. So according to the complaint, on or about January 29, 2005, at approximately 4 p.m., the individual Nicholas Quagmire, purchased an alcoholic beverages at a package store known as Quick Stop Package Store. The sale was for a 30-pack of 12-ounce beer, and the sale was to Quaglini at age 20, therefore being a sale to a minor. Between 4 p.m. on January 29, 2005 and 3:55 a.m. on January 30, 2005, Quaglini consumed all or a substantial portion of the beers. So he drank maybe up to 30 beers in that period of time. That is insane. He was driving his motor vehicle to the city of Hartford on I-84 westbound in the eastbound lane, striking head on. So he was going the wrong way in traffic, and he struck head on Jose and Miguel, who was a passenger. As a result of this collision, Torres died and Garcia was injured. His blood alcohol content was 253. Wow, it's pretty high. Well above the legal limit. Plaintiffs claim that the owner of the package store and the sale of alcohol was negligent, and that the negligent approximately caused the plaintiff injury and damages. He also brought a lawsuit going against the driver and the owner of the package store. That case has been consolidated with this case, and I don't have info. It doesn't go through it, the actual information of what the result of the case was. It just says that it's more like whether or not they can package it all into one lawsuit. It says the plaintiff should pursue their claims against the owner of the package store and the driver owner of the vehicle causing the accident. There is no way, however, that the defendant are liable for the plaintiff in this case. In order to hold a defendant in this case liable, there must be a duty of the defendant to the plaintiff, which duty was breached. The court finds no duty, but it's just basically whether or not they can be both sued, I think, together. Ultimately, they found the landlord not, but we'll jump into the next hearing. And keep in mind, he was given probation and then violated it. It's just, anyways. So let's jump in.
Timothy D'Angelo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would support his coming to a full hearing. This young man was 17 years old when he was convicted for these offenses. The being on a lifetime registry is craziness, but I would absolutely bring him to a full hearing.
Okay, Mr.
Agreed.
Poe. Timothy D'Angelo, I move to grant a full hearing. Mrs. Page?
Aye.
Mr. Poe?
Aye.
I vote aye, full hearing granted.
Next, we have Timothy D'Angelo, represented by Attorney Carlson.
Good morning, members of the board. Attorney Scott Carlson on behalf of Mr. D'Angelo. We did submit what I believe to be a fairly comprehensive pardon application. I will just say briefly that I believe Mr. D'Angelo has done the hard work to earn this opportunity and to earn an absolute pardon. And I know Mr. D'Angelo has some remarks he'd like to share with the board and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, can you please state your name for the record?
Timothy D'Angelo.
Thank you, sir. At this time, you may explain to the board why you believe you're suitable for an absolute pardon.
First of all, I want to thank the board for hearing my case today. I appreciate the opportunity to explain what I've done, how I've grown, and where I am today. Undoubtedly, everyone here has seen my case extensively and knows how serious these charges were. I understand what I've done not only affects the victim, it also affects the victim's family and even my own family. The impact of relationships of a teenager can be long-lasting and very painful. Even as a teenager, I accepted full responsibility for my actions as I had told the truth. Following some difficult years, I accepted my fate and reflected during the time I was away. During that time, I learned useful skills while becoming an adult. As I reintegrated into society, I worked diligently to use those skills to help others. I sought mental health treatment while entering the workforce. I had gone through college and obtained a degree, and I've been working for the past 18 years while growing within the company as far as I could. I've assisted people in and outside of my job. As more fully explained through my application materials, I truly believe that a pardon today would boost my ability to assist more individuals in need while being able to work toward a better future. Thank you.
Madam Chair, you're muted.
Oh, okay, thank you. So, Mr. D'Angelo, can you tell us about some of those useful skills that you are referring to?
Yes, through the time I was away, I took advantage of every single opportunity that was available to build myself up mentally, and then also worked as a librarian. And during that time, it allowed me to kind of segue into society a lot more efficiently.
You said you worked as a librarian?
I did with the computer, yeah.
Okay, so are you referring to those skills as your computer skills?
Yes, that assisted big time.
Okay. Have you seen or heard anything from any of the victims?
I have not, no.
Okay. And in looking back, because there were 2 victims involved in this, have you figured out at the time what was going on with you? And,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
As explained through the application materials, we went through extensive research to figure out what caused my actions here. And through that, we found that a lot was based on my upbringing, when I was a child all the way up, and how I needed more mental health treatment than was allowed to me when I was a young teenager. So we went through that, and also it was growing up for the most part that allowed me to get in touch with my emotions a little bit more and not react the way I did.
And in addition to working as a librarian, what else have you done in your community that, would say to someone looking back, that what you just talked about needing more mental health treatment? How long did you do treatment for? You don't have to go through the details, but how long?
It was a few years.
Beg your pardon?
I'm sorry, that was a few years I went through treatment.
Which years were those, and what was your takeaway from that?
When I was away, I was in Garner, and I was through treatment through that entire time. So that was about 2.5 years. And then following that, I had mental health treatment at Charlotte Hungerford Hospital for about, I would say, 6 months to a year. And then when I re-entered the workforce and I went back to college, I was officially what I would consider ready to stop and then go through the next portion of my life.
Okay. So you're on the registry for a lifetime.
Yes.
Okay. And so what does that mean to you? What do you think is going to happen there? Because that's not going to go away anytime soon.
Yes, I mean, I will continue to do everything to benefit anybody in and around myself, and I will continue to work extremely hard to help anybody in society rather than harm them. And realistically, with a pardon, I would be able to continue on with my job, and through I don't know if you read the applications pretty thoroughly, but we have the Connecticut Alliance of Recovery Residences. What I will be on the board with them too, and assisting anybody with recovery needs, or anybody that I can with my certain technological skills.
And they're aware of what your criminal offenses are.
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of what you consider a healthy relationship, I know since I believe it's 2022 or 2021, does the person who you have this healthy relationship with now know of what your offenses are?
Yes, she is well aware of them. We had a very heartfelt discussion about them.
Okay, well, thank you for answering my questions, Mr. Poe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Mr. D'Angelo.
Morning.
Very well put together application. The evaluations that are here would show the progress back from the early 2000s to now. Really tell a story about where you are, and that's sometimes when it comes to offenses like this, that's what I really look for. And you've done incredibly well. Certainly, this is a case where you were very young, and the victims in this case were very young as well. You know, and certainly you've had the treatment to understand what happened here. And certainly, you know, I appreciate the things that you're doing in the community and how you're trying to help. And thank you for putting together, you and your attorney putting together a good application that gave me really everything I need to make a decision on this case. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Page?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. D'Angelo, you know, you were 17 years old when all of this occurred, you know, and I have to say that giving a 17-year-old a lifetime registry, although I don't condone the behavior, by all means, it was unacceptable. But giving a 17-year-old a lifetime registry really, it baffles me. However, I saw that it was a deterrent for you because you haven't engaged in any other behaviors like this. And so I commend you as well, because a lot of people don't really want to understand why it is that they do what they do. But it's clear that you have taken the steps and put forth the effort to really try to avoid this from ever occurring again. And so I commend you on your efforts, and I appreciate the application as well, as my colleagues have already said, that your attorney has put together, and I will be supporting your request for an absolute pardon. However, it is my understanding that, Madam Chair, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it is my understanding that if a pardon is granted for this young man, the registry will be terminated immediately. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And
that's a good thing. So
yeah.
for you can move forward
Okay.
with your life.
Right.
Not to negate, please, what the victims have gone through, and by any means, I'm not trying to diminish that, but you know, it's crimes like these, and we see people turn their lives around, that really, really, you know, is why we do what we do.
Right. And so, you know, I read the entire file as it was presented, but you know, for the public, I wanted them to understand what some of the skills that Mr. D'Angelo said he learned, so that they can understand that based on our decision today, why we made that decision. And as you stated, Mrs. Page, you know, he was 17 years old at the time, and reading the three evaluations kind of said it all to me, that this young man has been very committed over the years. And so to that end, I would like to move that Timothy D'Angelo be granted an absolute pardon. Mrs. Page,
Aye.
Mr. Pohl,
Aye.
absolute pardon granted. And good luck, Mr. D'Angelo.
Thank you.
Thank you, members of the board.
Thank you. Nick,
Maybe he was given a lifetime registry because he had offended twice in a 2-year period. It shows here, we don't have information. I can't share this because it's his registry, but I'll just read from it that in 2003, he was found guilty of 5321A, which is injury of risk of injury to a child, illegal sexual contact of a child. 2 years later, he's convicted again. So maybe the judge is like, you might have a problem. You might have pedophiliac tendencies. It might be in the best interest to protect the public by giving you a lifetime registry because it's a disease. Right? I think that this is a good time for Mr. O'Shea to tell the board what it is that we're dealing with.
Why should you be alleviated from the stigma of being a sex offender when the victim is still suffering emotionally and physically because of abuse?
Oh man, I miss Mr. O'Shea, Miss Jackson. I mean, just having to watch these Connecticut hearings, it drives me nuts. Now, you might argue this or that or that or this, but let's first remember now. Remember, he didn't go to trial, so these are always plea deals. And plea deals are always much less, right? Lesser than what it was that he was charged with. And we don't have any other information. But I believe that in the wisdom of the judge, there is a reason why he received a lifetime registry. And for the board to just for her to actually say, I don't understand how this could be possible. And what else did they say? Wow, you've really done a great job working on yourself. What? Because of programs he took in prison? And something else I want to point out is that he said, I am sorry for what I did to my victim. He never said victims. He never acknowledged that he had multiple victims. He said victim. And the board did not call him out on that. They had to bring up the victims aspect, and that in itself should have been a huge red flag. Just want to point that out. So I'm not sure. Actually, it's not clear to me if he's going to have to register still to continue to register with the pardon, or if this exonerates that. It was confusing. I believe that he won't have to. That was always my understanding. But anyways, the 2005, where Mr. Pohl says, you were really young and your victim was really young too. It's like his victim, when he was 17, would have been at oldest 13 years old, because the 53A, 71A, which he was pled guilty to, is a sexual assault second, where the victim, where the offender has to be 3 years older. So 16, 15, 14. And it says then 3 years older, but the age of the victim is 13 to 15. So it's possible she was 14. But if I had to guess, I would say more likely 13. And remember, it's a sexual assault charge as well. It's not a carnal knowledge of a juvenile. So there's I don't know. To me, when it comes to pardoning someone who's guilty of these type of offenses, it's just too scary for me. I mean, and you might say, well, he doesn't have any other felonies under his belt. They say, oh, his record's great. And it's like, well, yeah, their records are always great. They're always flawless. They always don't have anything on the record. There's only one crime. There's only one type of offense that you'll find for 99.9% of offenders of this nature. But I don't know. This is just how I feel. What do you think? We're going to do one more hearing.
Mr. Pohl?
This is one count of risk of injury to a child that dates back to 2013, when Mr. Ramos was 20 years old. I would support hearing this case.
Mrs. Page?
I agree.
Okay. Alizar Ramos, I move to grant a full hearing. Mr. Pohl?
Aye.
Mrs. Page?
Aye.
I vote aye, full hearing granted.
Thank you, sir. First of all, good afternoon to the members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity. I believe that I deserve a pardon because of the trials and tribulations that I've gone through over the last 10 years or so since my conviction. Since my release, I have done everything in my power to try to better myself and put myself in a better position. I went to school, went to Nets Tractor Trailer School, got my CDL, and I've been driving trucks since 2018. I recently just bought a house with my brother for my family. I'm trying to just provide the best life that I can for them and for myself going forward. I don't want to take away from anything that I've done. I understand what choices I made in my past, at a younger age, different state of mind. And I'm just trying to leave all those things in the past and move forward. My heart goes out to the family and the victims and their family. Excuse me, I'm kind of battling allergies right now. It's like the worst time. I apologize.
Okay.
But I'm just trying to do the best I can and be a good person and try to create the better life that I want for myself and for my future. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I just want to remove this blemish from my past. I don't want my past to define me as a person moving forward.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Pohl?
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I'm looking at here is one count of risk of injury to a child. And you did performed or were incarcerated. And during that time, you took the short-term treatment program for problem sexual behavior. And
Yes, sir.
that went okay. That gave you some insight as to what was going on.
Yeah, one thing I took away from that program was I wasn't really understanding of the nature of empathy. And that's what I remember mostly from that, putting myself in the other person's shoes and how it affects them. So I took that principle and kind of applied it to other areas of my life. And it's kind of it has made an impact in the way that I go about certain situations. Try not to be so hot-headed or make rash decisions. I try to put myself in the other person's shoes and really be empathetic towards them and what he or she may be going through. And it caused me to make decisions in a different light.
Okay. And what I'm reading is that when you were released, you did not do any further treatment for problem sexual behavior.
No, I wasn't required to by the court to take any further courses or anything like that.
So probation did not have you complete any further programming in that regard.
No, sir.
And how long were you on probation? How long were you on probation for this offense?
As in total, like as a whole,
Yes.
probably it wasn't that extensive of time, maybe 8 months or something. I really can't recall some of the
Well, you were
specific
given 3 years, but you violated it twice, and then you had to serve 18 months in prison.
Right.
Yes.
So you were on for 8 months, and during the course of that, what happened?
During those times, I tried to find work. I wouldn't have too much success in that department, mainly because of my record. A friend of mine ended up renting me a room to stay, and then as payment for him, I helped him in his job on the weekends. He had a home health aid position where I would come help him take care of his client, and I kind of paid for my room. I was still trying to find work, but I wasn't really having any luck because of
Okay.
whatever when my work come
So,
up.
but let's go back for 1 second. So let's go back to the violations. What happened with the violations?
So those violations, the first violation was I was at a party with some friends, and somebody recognized me and made a complaint because there were minors at the party. So my probation officer got wind of it, and he violated me for it. The second one was of a similar nature, but I wasn't at a party. I was at my house. My cousin was there. He was also a minor. He was under, I think he was 16 or 15 at the time. So because he was there and I was there, it was a violation. So he ended up putting me back. He put me on a bracelet, and then I was put back in.
Okay, and so have you been on the registry?
No, I was not required to register.
You're never required to register. And so when did probation end for you?
Probation would have ended when I went back in for that 18-month span. I don't recall exactly what time of year that was. I know I finished in 2015, so that would have been 2013 would have when I would have finished with my last stint on probation before I was incarcerated again. It was
Okay.
2013.
So those two, and then you just had 18 months. So
Yeah.
what have things been like since? Because you haven't been on the registry. And you know, I'm not insinuating anything, but the two violations that you had on probation had to do with being in areas where there were minors.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question completely. What is it
So
been like for?
so this was 2015 or so. This is some time ago, right?
Yes.
What have things been like since then?
Well, when I got out, I needed to try to find a way to make money. I needed to try to build myself back up. So I looked for jobs. The same friend who helped me with the room, he helped. I ended up moving in with him, and he got me a job at the car auction. I was pulling cars for a while. Got a second job working for Taco Bell.
Okay, so let
Those
me
jobs
just
were really working for me.
Mr. Ramos, let me just try to get somewhere with this, because I can appreciate all of that, but what I'm trying to get at is, like, when it comes to being around children, and they weren't the victim in this case was 11. So what I'm trying to determine, like, in terms of relationships that you've had, in terms
Am I
of being
struggling being
around
around?
minors and things like that.
There aren't any issues in that regard at all. During the time of this incident, I was in a very different place, different state of mind. I was attending Job Corps. I just went through a brief therapy session where they had me on medication for it. And I'm not using those as, oh, this is why. I made an ill-informed decision at a young time, and I regret it, and I will regret that forever. You know, the impact that I've had on that person's life, and I've had on my own and my family's. I don't have any problems being around anybody. I consider myself a people person, and I try to make everybody as comfortable as possible in every situation.
Okay, and then, so the two violations had to do with being in the presence of, not having anything to do with anything that might have been like the original offense.
No, it was strictly because we were in the same vicinity.
Madam Chair, I don't have any further questions.
Yeah. Mrs. Page, do you have any? Because I have a few.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Mr. Ramos, when you were on probation, they violated you because you were on websites that you weren't supposed to be on. You were being non-compliant. So in addition to your being around minors, you were doing things that you were not supposed to be doing on probation. Is that right? Because I'm sitting here when you're talking to my colleague and he's asking you about your violations of probation. I'm just like, they wouldn't just bring you back for being at a party. And then give you 18 months. You really had to be defiant while you were under supervision. So is that true that you were not complying? Is that a fair statement?
I will say that it is true that I was not compliant in the sense that I was around these people. I did not make any.
What does your being around people have to do with your being on internet sites that you're not supposed to be on?
The internet sites, that's just a teenage mind looking for a release.
Okay.
You know, teenagers, we do stuff, and
That's a non-compliance. And what about your not reporting like you were supposed to? Because that's one of the other things that was in your report.
not reporting.
It says you were not reporting.
That I was not showing up to probation.
Yes.
Was it probation or was it treatment?
Failing to report to
OAP.
yeah, I don't even know what OAP is.
So that's the Office of Adult Probation. And the concern that I have is he was referred to the connections for a sex offender evaluation. Okay. And it was at the same time in 2014 that his probation began. But he said he did not participate in any program. And the problem is that they confirm that the evaluation was done, but no record of him having been referred for participation in actual treatment. But I think that may have been because he violated his probation.
Okay.
So he didn't have time.
Okay.
So,
okay. Well, again, but he was making it seem like it was something so, minuscule as to why he was violated, and that was not the case. I mean, granted, it was not the same behavior as his original offense, which thank God. However, it was because you were young and you were doing what you wanted to do and not listening. So that's over and done with. Excuse me. So I had an issue, Mr. Ramos, with your description of what occurred in your application. Your description says that you superficially touched the victim. I'm not sure what that means.
To put it plainly and in layman's terms, just my hands on the top of their body. There was never any insertion of any kind or anything of that nature.
But why did you plead guilty?
Because I knew that it was wrong at the time.
For touching her shoulders?
No, not it wasn't her shoulders. No, I grabbed her breast. I touched her breast. And that was the extent of it. There wasn't anything that went like further beyond or something like that. But I understand at the time. I understand that it was still an inappropriate decision for me to make. So when I was approached by the police officers about it, I told them everything that happened. And then I pled guilty in the court because I knew I didn't have really a defense for that. It was
So
wrong
why
thing to
does,
do. And
what, in your application, it says that you engaged in incidents. So it occurred more than one time?
No, I don't understand.
Incidents. It says you engaged in incidents, with an S at the end, of illegal sexual contact.
I don't have any recollection of that. And it says this was a one-time offense, and it was handled, the wrong way.
I
But as
just
far as
go ahead.
as far as it being plural incidents, I don't have any recollection of that happening more than just the one time.
I just don't understand. It doesn't sound as if you're really accepting responsibility for what you did. It sounds like you're trying, I mean, even in your description of what occurred, and someone who would have participated in treatment for this kind of behavior in the community, they would have been able to help you get to the root of what caused you to behave in this way. And so for me, the most difficult thing that I have with your request for this application is, I'm not going to say that you're minimizing your role, but I'm going to say that I don't think that you have fully come to appreciate why you received this sentence. At least not enough to be able to talk about it. And I understand that this is difficult, it's three of us and one of you, but I would have preferred honesty. And maybe that's how you remember it, but that's not what our records are indicating. So I appreciate your speaking with me, sir. If you have anything to respond to that, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, Madam Chair, I'm all set.
Okay.
I would just like to be clarified on.
Go ahead. You want to clarify?
I would just like to be clarified on what exactly I'm not being honest about.
I didn't like. Why would you say in your application, I superficially touched the victim? What is a superficial touch?
Above skin. There was never any penetrative motion. So it was just on above skin.
So why couldn't you just say, I touched the victim's breast?
Choice of words, I guess, sounded better. Superficially.
Okay.
I'm not an uneducated person. I just tried to use a verbal language that, get across that I'm not just like saying anything.
Okay.
I apologize for any discrepancy.
So, Mr. Ramos, are you done, Mrs. Page?
I am. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So, you were in a relationship with someone that had a young child. Do you remember how old the child was?
She was roughly 3 or 4 months old when her brother and I got together.
It said you were in a relationship for approximately 5 years.
Yes. So now the child, she just turned, last October, she just turned 5.
I beg your pardon?
Last October, she just turned 5.
But your relationship ended in November last year.
Yes.
So you're saying, I don't understand. I asked you how old the child was, and you said 4 months. But now you're telling me that when the relationship ended, the child was 5.
Yeah, when we got together, she was roughly around the age of 3 or 4 months old. When we first began our relationship.
For 5 years.
Roughly. The timeline for my relationship with her mother is kind of sporadic because we were together for a time and then we broke up. She had a child, and then sometime after that, we got back together. So as to how old the child was exactly when her mother and I got together, I don't have an exact answer of roughly 3 or 4 months.
Do you
And
remember
then
why the
last November is
relationship
when
ended last year?
the relationship ended because I came to a decision where I wasn't happy in the relationship with her anymore. So we had a discussion, and then it was kind of a thing that happened over time. We were just kind of growing apart, and it got to a point of, all right, we got to accept that this isn't what makes us both happy, and we separated. It was amicable. There was no violence or any, obviously there was disagreements because we were in different places, but it was just a matter of, this isn't what I want anymore. I need to figure something else out.
Okay. Yeah, I have some concerns here. Mr. Pohl, what are your thoughts?
May I just ask, I'm sorry, Mr. Pohl. So I just wanted to go back to look, Mr. Ramos, about what was reported in the violation of probation. And it goes into great detail about where exactly you touched. So I would encourage you to review it, because it doesn't just say that you touched her breast. It doesn't say that. So I apologize. Go ahead, Mr. Pohl.
No, that's totally fine, Board Member Page. It's, we work on these together to try to get the right resolution, right? So Madam Chair, this original offense goes back to, the conviction date goes back to 2013. And that's the docket number also reflects 2013. It's risk of injury to a child, followed by 2 violations of probation. And which resolved in 2015 with 18 months of incarceration. And the basis of the violations were, if we look at what somebody would be asked to do today in similar situations, I don't know that social media would be a requirement in this case. However, it was at the time, and it was a compliance issue. And the ability of Mr. Ramos to just clearly reflect on what's there, right? Is concerning, however, as well, we're looking at, a relationship that, based upon questioning that just occurred there, a relationship that occurred that didn't work out, that ended in, an amicable kind of way, that is what we're looking to have happen in an adult type situation. And certainly Mr. Ramos is facing some collateral consequences here when it comes to employment and such. And that's also concerning to me, because once somebody has completed their sentence, to have that continue to stand in the way of them, fully reintegrating in society by getting a good job in a decent place to live is also important. However, I'm interested in what other board members have to say in this case.
Mrs. Page?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, I can appreciate all that Mr. Ramos has had to offer. I think that he really needs to go back and try again, because he's not accepting enough responsibility for his role in this. And you know, I hear what he's saying, and it does say in the report that the breasts were part of it, but it says a lot of other things as well. And for me, when petitioners come before us and they give us one story and we clearly know what the other story is, I always tend to feel that they're trying to be deceptive. And I understand that this is an embarrassing platform. I get it. This is a lot. But what we're looking for here is an honest exchange of question and answer to gauge whether or not this person has truly changed. And unfortunately, you know, I hear what he's saying, like he wants to, and I don't know if it's nerves, I don't know what it is, but I just don't, I'm not hearing what I need to hear to say, okay, go ahead and erase this, you know? And that's just where I am.
Right. So I have a few concerns myself about the lack of some of the information or the actual information from the two violations. And the fact that, yes, he did complete the short-term sex offender program during his incarceration, initial one. And he said basically what he gained from that was empathy. But, you know, that's kind of the only information that we've really gleaned from Mr. Ramos today. I would have actually liked him to, you know, really acknowledge what he did and, you know, express some remorse for what he did. And
I think he is remorseful. I just think that he's embarrassed. And I get it.
Yeah, but you know, if you're remorseful, and you're embarrassed, you have to be truthful about what you're remorseful for. So if you can't do that, then, you know, how do I know that you're truly remorsed for what you did? So I'm just concerned and wondering if there's something else that Mr. Ramos needs to go back and do, or do we all have a clear understanding of you know, his charges and whether the short-term sex offender program was helpful to him?
I mean, the other piece of this is that it's been 9 years.
Right. And
since-
that's what that's what I'm grappling with too, Mr.
Yeah.
Paul. It's like he's so young, and he was so young then. And he's not owning up to it, but I understand why. And do I want to penalize him just because he's not saying, well, yeah, I did this, you know? He hasn't been in any trouble. I don't even see speeding tickets. Like I think I'm being tough. Is what I'm thinking, because he's not saying what I wanted to say. But Madam Chair, I
So
think
he has gone on and done some good things. So maybe this is one of those second chance opportunity for him to move on.
That's what I think as well.
Is that where we think we are now?
I think so.
Okay.
He did
So Alizar Ramos, I move to grant an absolute pardon. Mr. Pohl?
Aye.
Mrs. Page?
Aye.
Absolute pardon granted. So, Mr. Ramos, we wish you the best of luck.
And here we go. I thought that we were getting like a real quality hearing. I actually made the mistake. I emailed Richard this before I finished the hearing, and I said, they're giving a real WWE beatdown. Like they're actually getting at him for his lies. I didn't yet finish it. Then I finished it and I said, are you kidding me? What did we just listen to? Why? It's not the board's job, which we see all too often with this board, make excuses for the applicant. Give reasons for the applicant. She was 11 years old. What? They're actually saying, well, it's been 9 years. We're talking about a pardon. We're talking about wiping his record clean. We're not talking about whether he should be paroled for his crime. If this is the first time you have seen pardon hearings, you might not be able to relate as much as but because when you watch it in Louisiana, they hold anyone getting a pardon to the highest standard. You have to be perfect through that hearing. You have to have your ducks in a row. You have to look like the poster child citizen. This is the exact opposite. He lies. He doesn't take accountability. From what I saw from this hearing, it was scary. Who answers the question, how old is the daughter of your ex? Who goes back 5 years and said that she's 4 months old? You don't do that. Unless he has something to hide, in my opinion. It just doesn't seem rational to me. Imagine, put yourself, someone asks you a question, oh, she's 4 months years. Well, no, she's turned 5. They're making excuses for him. I think he is remorseful. He's just embarrassed. He's embarrassed? Wait, he sexually assaults an 11-year-old girl? He's embarrassed. It was just superficial. He just touched her. Even in his explanation to his lies in the application, he's lying. You don't go to prison because you touch her on her breast over her clothes. It doesn't happen. Man, it's like the board is just dumb, naive, something. It's like, see, that's what I meant. You watch the first few hearings and say, wow, I'm actually impressed. But then when you come to this, it's just, you don't let him come back. Let him apply again for a pardon. How can you reward someone when they fail so miserably to pass anything on the litmus test? I just don't get it. You can tell the culture of Connecticut and the initiative. They probably, I'm just assuming that they, it's like the government. They say we want to hand out as many pardons as we can. That's the goal, right? It's like, I don't know if there's a quota, but I think the goal is let's pardon as many as we can. And then they go uphill against that. So it's like they want to find ways to pardon. So they're actually making it up for him instead of even asking him. Or he said, well, why? Well, they did ask. I thought they were doing a good job in the question. Why didn't you just say it how it was? And he said, well, it sounded better if it that way. And then she goes on. He hasn't even had a speeding ticket. And of course, my initial response was, of course, he doesn't even have a speeding ticket. I mean, people who commit these crimes, again, they're rule followers. They fit into they blend in. They're 0.01%. Otherwise, 99.901. Never. They don't have write-ups. They don't do anything wrong. They're perfect. You don't do something like that to an 11-year-old and not have something very wrong with you. Where you might argue that maybe we shouldn't just grant. Now, the thing is, I don't think they even required him to register because we don't see him on the registry. So he didn't have that. But I think people have a right to know if you assaulted an 11-year-old and did, I think employers have a right to know, girlfriends are like the wives, people have, or they need to know. It's the duty of, you don't give the benefit of the doubt to the one who did the assault. And it's only been 9 years. I just don't get it. But that's just me. Who am I? Who are we? We're just the sheeple. We just bear here. Anyways, thank you, Richard, for jumping in on the help on all this. And if you want to see more hearings like this, let me know in email, comment section, however you want to get in touch with me. Let me know, because I can do more of them. And with that, I'll let you go.